Welcome to the Life You're Made For with me, Dr. Heather Penny. We're going to be having conversations that talk about us spiraling up versus spiraling down, because we all want to be living lives that are about thriving, not just surviving. This is the life you're made for. So let's get going. Hello, Ken. It's so good to have you on my show today.
Thanks for having me.
Ken and I go way back, and I've been really looking forward to having him on this podcast, because we started way back when we had two little kids in T-ball, and it's just moved up from there. And, you know, you get to know each other in the family sense and in the community sense, but then to recognize what each other's doing in the professional world. It's been so fun to just get to know Ken in all his forms. And one of the things I can say is he's consistent in every area. So he's exactly why I've asked him to endorse my book, Grace Space, which is also why I wanted to bring him on the show today to just talk a little bit about that. Before we jump in, though, Ken, can you tell everybody a little bit of who you are and what you do?
So I run golf courses in my main course of business. We have four City of Sacramento properties that we manage. Our flagship golf shop here in Sacramento is called Haggin Oaks Golf Course, and we always kind of tease it's kind of Disneyland for golfers. It's a very, very busy municipal golf course. It's in terms of volume, it's actually the largest in the entire country, and so that keeps us very busy. But then, like all of us, I have all of these side fun hobby gigs. I write for some country music publications. I am chairman of the board of a group called the National Golf Buyers Association. I help with my wife with her organization, with a little nonprofit called the AGM, the Association of Golf Merchandisers. And then just because I'm cruising for a bruise, and we started a music festival 16 years ago that we host called Golf and Guitars at Haggin Oaks. And so it's kind of like the guy at the circus twirling on the plates. And so far, none have crashed. A couple might have teetered once or twice, but yeah, that keeps us really busy.
Yes, I was so impressed with everything you're doing. And I'm a country music fan. And so to hear you were doing golf and guitars, and, you know, Darren goes back to Nashville all the time. So we have a lot of roots over in Nashville. And so what a fun experience that is. And more importantly, it's raising funds. It's usually a different charity you're focusing on, right?
Yeah, so we raise money. The core of it goes through our Morton Golf Foundation. We have a nonprofit that we run that funds about 15 different outreach programs across Northern California. They include Swing Club for the Blind, which has programs where people who are blind or are very sight restricted can play golf. Our California Eagles program, which is the first and largest Special Olympics golf program in the country. We've got programs for inner city kids and scholarships and all kinds of other fun stuff. But then during the golf tournament portion, the artists that come and commit time and come volunteer their time for our big music festival, they get to play in the tournament portion for a charity of their choice also. So we're sending money off to St. Jude and children's hospitals across the country. And so it's been fun. We actually, about 8 years ago, the money's raised. Megan Connors, a songwriter in Nashville, she won. And she raised 10 grand to buy a school bus in Africa for kids. So literally, some of those monies are literally going halfway around the world. That's pretty cool.
Well, that's just one of your activities.
Yeah.
But I remember showing up at the event, and I think it's a 2-day event. Am I correct on that?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we love the first night where there's just the intimacy of the singer-songwriters and all the people who've written songs, and many of them we recognize, but we get to hear the backstory on it. And also some new artists are introduced with acoustic kind of style. So we've loved that experience. But one of the things that really touched my husband and I was just watching all the recipients of these scholarships for kids. And we're a huge advocate of education and anyone that doesn't have access to education. So Darren and I were just very touched with that. We're just thought, wow, what aren't the Mortons doing?
Yeah. Well, it's about the legacy that you leave behind you, right? So
isn't that the truth?
We're here for just a short time. So if this year we have 20 worthy recipients that we just announced this last week, and they're going to share 55 grand. And if that helps get them through that next process of 4 years for them, even if we're just a small piece of it, then we're doing some good. So we need more of that in the world.
Don't we? Yes. I was a scholarship kid. Darren was a scholarship kid. And we just love to be able to pay that forward. And we were always so grateful. We don't know who that money came from, but it got me through a 4-year university. It got my husband through a 4-year university. And
Yeah.
being able to see how people are just stepping up to help our youth, that life's expensive and getting into adulting is expensive. And being, if money's the only thing that's a barrier to them, wow, I just love the fact that we can step up, or at least encourage them that people are caring.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
in it alone. So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
why I'm not adulting yet. It's too expensive. So I'm going to stay a kid. So
it's way too stressful, kid. I've decided that as well. Or I should say, we're just defining our own spin on what adulting gets to be. We get to have a lot of fun, and we get to have a lot of plates spinning
yeah,
unapologetically, don't we?
the world may disagree with us, but we're going to be kids at heart forever. So
Isn't that the truth? I love it. That's probably what we've always clicked.
yeah.
And tell us a little bit about your family life. You've got such a strong family life, and it just spans many generations. I know we got to celebrate with you all in Haggin Oaks what was it, 100 years or 70 year?
Our 90 year.
90
Yeah.
years. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Tell us a
yeah,
little bit about that.
yeah. So it starts way back in 1958 when my dad started at Haggin Oaks. And so this is year 66 here at the golf course for him. So I have been wildly blessed in being able to work side by side with my dad my whole life. I started giving change on the driving range when I was 8 and working in the shop at 11. And it's all I've ever known. That's all I've ever done. He is the most awarded PGA golf professional in the history of the PGA of America. And actually, we just found out yesterday he's going to win the PGA's Master Professional of the Year award this year in Texas. And so, in our industry, he casts this great, massive shadow that is this awesome compass for us all to continue to follow. So, I've been very blessed, and hopefully, I've been able to use some of those core values and things that he's taught me working alongside of him with my own kids. And I've got 3 boys, 2 of which are out of college and engineers and doing wonderful things. I've got a young man at Colorado State, and then my daughter's still in high school here in Rockland.
I love that. You mentioned core values. What are some of the core values that you hold?
For us, we build our whole company around it, and there are things like honesty and perseverance, and just trying to do the right things for the right reasons. We even have some quirky ones in there, like make work fun, and because again, as we said earlier, I mean, this journey we're on short, and if you're going to work to have to just do work, you're not going to want to do it very long. And so those are things that we try to live and breathe. And we always tell new hires that we can teach you the roles, the duties. And if you are coming to work with the right attitude and trying to, embody the values of the company each and every day, rarely are you ever going to get in trouble for messing up the duties. We'll teach you those. So we always try to find people that have a wonderful heart inside, and then we can do the rest.
Well, and the other thing too I've noticed about you, Ken, is the breaking down of barriers. I'm not a golfer, and so golf for me has always been very intimidating. And yet I grew up in golf world, and Palm Springs, where I grew up, which is one of the golf meccas, right, of the world over there. And
Yeah,
my husband's
for
a
sure.
golfer, but I remember even getting on the golf course a couple times and just feeling stressed because I can't hit it as far. And so I have to do it like 6 or 7 times. So who am I holding up behind me? And just like, it's just all this golf etiquette and making sure that you're running on point. And then I can't even last 18 holes, to be honest. I'll be like 9 holes, I'm exhausted. So it's just this whole other world. And I remember going, I don't think it's for me. One of the things that you've done for me personally, as someone who's not a huge comfort golfer, is your intentionality to break down the barriers, everything from people who aren't really exposed to golf, from kids to people like myself to handicap. And again, growing up in such a golf mecca, I never heard that. It was like either get in or and get your stuff together or get off the course because we don't want you here.
Yeah.
I have never felt that. And I also felt that from the legacy when I was at your celebration of 90 years. I felt that legacy. That seemed like that was a value that your father, even though he was so competent, so professional, and so accomplished, it seemed like his legacy was he wanted golf to be accessible to everyone. And that really touched me.
Yeah. And our industry historically has been really terrible at that.
Yeah.
If you know his story, it's easy to know why that's been such a priority for him. So,
Mm,
my grandfather was blind when my dad was born. He was actually the very first person in the entire world ever to have a cornea transplant and actually
mm,
regained his sight later in his life.
mm,
But this is back, in the 40s and 50s where
mhm,
my grandmother, Charlotte, was the breadwinner for the family,
mm,
and that's she was a
mm,
secretary at Campbell Soup here in
mm,
Sacramento, and they had nothing. I mean, my
mhm,
dad talks about using rocks as cars in the dirt out that they lived on
mm,
their grandparents' farm in Carmichael, and literally had nothing. And
mhm,
um, the golf professional at Del Paso Country Club at the time, his name was Frank Minch, um,
mm,
actually hired my dad as a young teenager to be able to go over and caddy over there. And it gave my dad an opportunity to, have new clothes and
mhm,
ultimately afford a car. And
mm,
it eventually became his career. And it was that opening that Frank, at a very prestigious private club, gave this little poor farm kid an opportunity that literally
mm,
changed his life. And
mm,
and so my dad, for his whole life, has wanted to provide that same level of opportunity for everyone that he touches throughout his life. And our industry, golf industry, throws so many barriers at people,
mhm,
from costs to, the people on the golf course don't look like the way I do. And
mhm,
I mean, even our own city-owned golf courses in the 50s, African Americans weren't allowed to play. I mean, that's
mm.
not that long ago, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and
Mhm,
we just have all these, barriers, and so there's so many wonderful things from our game that we really just want to be
mm,
able to make the game available to everyone. And so, again, my brother and I, my brother works with us too. We
mhm,
have just followed his compass, and hopefully, added some new twists and turns to what my dad was doing. But we are our level of programming that we have in Sacramento is as robust as anywhere in the world. I mean,
mm.
if you have an interest in playing, we will figure out a way to get you out on the golf course.
Well, I am. I'm planning to get out there because I have a girlfriend who's like, Heath, you've got to get out there. And she already went and took, I guess there's a women's course.
Yep.
Um, and so she's been taking that. She's recently retired and she's like, you've got to do it. And I go, not yet because I'm working so much, but I am now intrigued that I now have an option where
Yep.
before I didn't feel like I had an option. I felt like it was you had to really know all this stuff before you could even show up on the course. And I thought, I don't know it. And even when I was younger, cost prohibitive. It was just an expensive sport. You
Yep.
couldn't afford to play it.
Yeah.
So
Even for us, we're a bunch of dudes trying to run this women's golf programming, and we were doing everything we knew how to make it as accessible as we could. And we're really doing a very lousy job. And so we hired a women's golf ambassador, and that's her only role, is to create mentorships and have these women that are coming into golf that are very intimidated because
yeah.
they're all those reasons you gave,
Yes.
and just hold their hand through the process to try to drop down all those barriers.
Well, I'm coming. I'm coming
Good.
because and that's the EQ language right there, emotional intelligence, right? You're being aware that we've got to make it comfortable for people if we want them to cross any gap or divide. And, that's why I'm such a huge fan of education. I don't advance my education to be superior. I advance my education to build bridges everywhere and to get more knowledge. And so if my education at any point becomes a barrier, I want to just drop that barrier and say, no, 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 no. I'm just extremely curious. And
Yeah.
more importantly, I want to see what's happening in the world and try and do whatever I can to build these bridges everywhere. And so that I just love that example. And I think that as I've watched you, this is why I wanted you to endorse my book. Everyone I asked to endorse it are people who are already living out gray space. And so I just thought, oh, you'll totally get it. You'll get it because it's instinctual. I've just put some language and some handles to it. So I guess I just want to pivot over there and say, what's a little bit of your perspective as you've stepped into this conversation around gray space?
For me, I was an organizational communications major at Sac State in college,
Mm,
and so much of what you touched upon was um, taught not as in the course of you know course topics, but I had all of these flashbacks of our chair Larry Chase doing uh, a variety of different projects in the classroom and all that kind of stuff. For
mm-hmm,
me, it was such a welcome kind of look back at my college years, which
mm,
I look back on really fondly. Um,
mm,
and um, and then equally, I think really had me step back and took a look at my role as dad as well.
mm-hmm,
Because in a sense, when we're if we're managing people in my business, we've got this big Morton Golf family, right, that we're
mm-hmm,
around in some cases more often than our own family.
mm-hmm.
And some of the relationships are very parental, especially with a lot of the new kids coming in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for me, it was those two things. And
Mhm,
like with the constructive and deconstructive communication,
mhm,
in trying to um, if there is a area where you're having to discipline or correct some behavior with somebody, being able to do it in such a way that is constructive and
mhm,
is moves them forward and doesn't tear them down.
mhm.
And again, that's the same thing that we're doing with our kids all the time, right?
Right, right, right.
My
Yeah,
wife actually has a great topic for or a title for that. She calls it sandwiching,
yeah.
and it's about having a good piece of bread on both ends, and then the meat of really what you want to have in the middle. And sometimes
Mhm.
the meat's not always great, but if
Yeah.
the bread's really good, the sandwich can go down easy. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly, yeah, each piece of bread representing just, again, that emotional intelligence to care for the human spirit as you're trying to, um, empower them to level up as a leader, right? It's not about empowering over someone, it's about empowering them to level up. And so any kind of course correction is about we care. We're saying this because we care. And I love that you're using the example of parenting because you'll notice in the book, I went flipped back and forth. I wanted people to see that how we live is how we lead, and how we lead is how we live. I think it's the dysfunctional leaders that try and keep a divide between the two and say, I'm only this type of leader, but I'm this type of spouse, parent, friend. The reality is we have to be integrated in it and we have to hold this. That to me is the definition of authenticity. I want everyone who runs into Heather Penny to go, yeah, who she is as a mother, as a wife, as a friend is also very similar how she is a leader. The values are the same. Some of the language might change or shift a little bit, but how we present ourselves as a human being is very similar in both circles. And so I love that you kind of noticed that in the book.
yeah, I think with it's right out of the first dedication in the book to Luca. It's
Yeah.
I the world is too small and is too um there's too many with media and with all of the information through social media coming at us all the time.
Mhm.
um there's not an ability to be two people anymore,
Mhm.
and you will be defamed immediately if you are
Mhm.
that. And so you got to own it and be that authentic you in
Mhm.
all places, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I totally agree with you there. It's that there's not a difference. It's
Mhm.
the work you and the home you are you.
Mhm. Exactly. And you're right on. I wanted people to see that dedication. For those of you who haven't read it, I did dedicate it to my son, Luke, who I think I said something about I'd never been a parent or mother to a 50 or to a teenage kid before. And he's the one that taught me a lot about gray space. My clients that I coached taught me a lot about gray space. It's us living in community with people, whether we're parenting or in significant relationships with significant others, or whether we're working over in the professional realm. We're choosing to be in community with people, and we're choosing. There's neither a hierarchy, there's no superiority, there's no inferiority. We're all on the same playing field, and how we show up to learn from one another, even if we are the boss and have to course correct. We're trying to learn, how can I best serve you so you can be your best self? Not how can I power up on you to get you to serve my agenda? I mean, that's a shame space, what I would call shame space, the antithesis
Yeah.
of a grace space. And so I think I wanted people to see in the dedication that this is me working it out as well. These are practices, and it's not about perfection. It's about choosing to focus on what you want to practice in life. And I guess I'll throw the question back to you. As you were reading it, there's 7 practices there. What was standing out to you of just saying, yeah, that's something I want to practice more of?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, it's probably um, the freedom and control. We um, owning your own business and having all of what I have tied up financially and time in here. Forever we want to really have our hands in on everything that's going on in the business, um, and somewhat to a detriment sometimes.
Mhm.
And it was a good solid reminder for me that if you hire the right people and you uh, provide them the right foundation and the faith,
Mm.
that 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, they're going
Mhm.
to do the right thing. And
Mhm.
having and which helps free me up to be able to go work on other things, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And really trying to um, you know providing the grace for yourself to let go is part of it as
Mhm.
well. um, but it's hard.
Yeah.
That's a practice we have all the time.
Yeah.
We actually we just started it this last year, where we
Mm.
actually have a seminar for all of our frontline staff,
Mm.
and it's an empowerment seminar. And you know we're in the customer service business.
Mhm.
Inevitably things go haywire. The
Mhm.
wheels fall off at some point. And um, our staff before would say, oh, we can't do that, that's
Mhm.
against policy, or my man, I'm not authorized to do that, or
Mhm.
they couldn't take care of the problem right in front of the
Mhm.
customer. And so the seminar, was an hour-long seminar, but the basic takeaway was, do the right thing. Do
Mhm.
whatever that is.
Yeah.
Do it and take care of the customer to make them happy. And if it's the wrong thing, we'll talk about it later, and no one's going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But just do the right thing. And you
Yeah.
are empowered. You have the space, the grace to be able
Mhm.
to do what you think is the right thing. And
Mhm.
gosh, it really changed
Mm.
everything in our company. I mean, they were able to deal with much more than they were able to before, but
Mhm.
their uh, the just feel good,
Mhm.
camaraderie between the staff members, and the collaboration between managers and frontline staff. And it was just really at an all-time high. And as
Mhm.
we have turnover all the time, we have to continually doing that, just to let
Mhm.
people know that you guys have the pedestal to be able to make those right decisions, and
Mhm.
no one's gonna take it out from under you.
Mhm. Gosh, I love you brought that up. It's making me think of a scenario that I just recently encountered on the freedom and versus control. And I'm glad you brought up that practice because that's been one of the harder ones for people to understand. And you started it with if we give them what they need, we can let go. So there's this certain amount of onus and responsibility we have as leaders or parents or everything else that we have this responsibility in. And I'm fresh off a retreat where I did Grace Space for the first time, and I gave a chapter to each of the leaders there in the room, and then they went and got to read it, and then I asked them come back with a visual and an example, and then how it would also influence the company. And the one of the leaders, their executive leaders, he came back and the visual he used, the word picture he used, he said, when I think about freedom versus control, I think about setting out snacks in front of them and letting them understand that this is their fuel. This is what they need to fuel. But it's not my job to pick out which snack they're supposed to eat, when they're supposed to eat it, how much they're supposed to eat. It's just my job to put the snacks out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool word picture to use to say, I'm going to own this, but I'm holding it with the tension of I have a responsibility. But if I try and force feed them that, now we're moving from freedom into a control and we're not empowering our people. We're leading through more fear, intimidation, and even just keeping our people young or codependent on them.
Yeah, it's interesting, that snack analogy, because in golf, people learn to play three different ways. They're either visual, or they learn through auditory, or they're kinesthetic. And
Mm-hmm.
typically we have one where we learn the most, and then we also have one in which we stress. So me as a
Mm.
golfer, I'm a very auditory learner, which wouldn't be a big surprise with my love of music.
Yeah.
I stress kinesthetically. So if I'm taking a golf lesson, the last thing I want is the teacher to be putting his hands on me, or showing me how to
Oh,
do that. With As we're teaching our staff, boy, we have to have those same considerations when we're putting out all the snacks, right?
yeah.
The way they learn and the way they adapt, we have to make sure that we're providing them the right snack that they're going to want to
Right.
eat, or in this
Right.
case, the method of them learning their correct way, so that they get the most out of whatever we're trying to teach and provide them, right?
Right. Right.
And I love that analogy. I'm going to use that one. That's really good.
I do too. Yeah, I'll be sending this podcast over to him as a thank you nod to what he was able to contribute to us because it got me thinking about that more as well. Like to your point, some people only like one kind of snack and they need a little bit of help to diversify. Some people their comfort level is I can only do one snack right now and we need to leave them alone.
Yeah.
And some people are like, "Oh, I don't have any of the right snacks out for this person." And recognizing to your point, leadership is this individualized. How do we really serve the person in front of them? And then you have the other extreme sometimes where I'm like, "No, you've got plenty of snacks." We need you to choose from these 20 in front of you. We don't need 50 more. So it's just all over the gamut of like how you're navigating those waters to your point, to compassionately deal with the stresses they're facing.
Yeah.
You know, the fear of failure in their job, the fear of not understanding, the fear of being put in the pressure of being, I like your thought. I've never heard about that. I know the three learning styles, but I never thought about a stress learning style. So the fear that they're being pushed to learn in a stress learning style and not being aware of the fact that that's not serving them well. And so you just completely explained the heartbeat of Grace Space.
Well, that is good. That's I think it goes back, to being that parent again, right?
Mhm.
Where we parent our children differently.
Mhm.
I have a daughter who's way more sensitive than my three boys. If
Yeah.
I just as much raise my voice with her, there's
Mhm.
tears, and it's, the
Mhm.
world's coming to an end. And my
Mhm.
second oldest, I can, verbally beat him over the head with a bat, and he might not even know that I'm there, right?
Yeah.
And so it's and the way their snacks are going to be very, very different between the two of
Exactly.
them, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And I think Grace is really having that sensitivity. And again, Grace tool is an emotional intelligence tool to be able to slow it down and
yeah,
ascertain, am I giving them the freedom or am I crossing over to the shadow side of that and trying to control them? Am I trusting them or am I really crossing over and I'm got a lot of fear? And our people pick up on it. Our kids pick up on it. Our people pick up on it when we're leading out of control or fear. They don't like it. It makes them stressed and they've lost the capacity to be creative, to innovate, to solve problems because they're so worried about picking up on our stress, which comes from control and fear and all these others, destructive communication, all these other areas that really are stressing our people out. And then we lose what we need from them to make the organization a better space and a better, higher level of living and leading in.
yeah. I know with my music, it's if I have things weighing on me, if there's work
Hmm.
stresses, if there's you know, a lot of, whirlwind going on in my
Hmm.
business life, it's exceptionally difficult to be creative and to think outside the box
Hmm.
on both my personal and my business life. And you gotta I mean, we have to clear the decks in order for that mind to work in that space for sure.
Hmm.
And that goes for us and our staff, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
And you brought this up a little earlier, and I do wanna circle back around to it. You can't offer what you're not giving to yourself. So you said this earlier, and I caught the phrase, I was like, "Well done, kid." You said something about, "I gotta offer grace to myself," about maybe missing a snack or maybe missing what I didn't put out right or maybe not, misunderstanding the person in front of me or the fact I was having a bad day and I missed the person in front of me. Being able to have grace to yourself allows you to course correct as you need to, or to, I guess, have the humility to learn in that space that says, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry I missed this. I'm here to learn now. I guess that's what I want to ask you. What are some ways you offer grace to yourself?
Oh boy, that's probably the hardest one.
I know it is.
For me, I find myself overly critical on kind of who woulda, shoulda, coulda, right?
Yeah.
And you know, for me, it's trying to carve out a piece of the day that is unrelated to the whirlwind.
Mm,
That's and for me, in most cases it's music.
mm,
Where the first thing I do every morning when I wake up at 5:30 is I have a little website that I run that's called That Nashville Sound, and it's
mm,
unplugging and it's listening to new music and kind of
mm,
going down the rabbit hole of new artists and new songs and all that kind of stuff. And for me, that
mm,
is the kind of the plug in the bottom of the bathtub that kind
mhm,
of lets all the other stuff that might be weighing me down go away a little bit. So
mm,
I'm able to start fresh. It's a routine now for me so that it kind of sets me up for the rest of the day. And it's fairly unrelated for the most part to what
mhm,
I'm going to be doing the rest of the day.
mm.
And so that is, it's like a just kind of shower, kind of washing
Yeah.
all the dirt off. And
Yeah.
for me, that's enough to take that big deep breath and
Mhm,
kind of recharge the batteries enough to
mhm,
where I can kind of take on the world again, no matter what else seems to be weighing me down. And
mm,
um, if I don't get that, if I'm on the road or if I'm traveling, all that kind of stuff,
mhm,
I do have a sense that the days are shorter. My patience with myself is a little bit shorter.
mhm,
I really have to have that conscious detox, step away from it all there to just
mhm,
breathe, right? And
mhm,
that's going to
mhm,
be done different for everybody. It might be fishing or going on a walk with your spouse or whatever, but being able to just pull away and breathe
mhm,
and just kind of recognize that in the big scope, what might be weighing you down isn't maybe all that important in the big scope of
Mhm.
things.
I'm so glad you brought that up. You know, one of my questions is, what's one of your morning rituals? And I've watched leaders, I no longer even ask them, do you have one? I just say, what is it? Because leaders who are doing great things and leaving great legacies, they have a way they start their day. And I've gotten so curious about it. And to your point, it's different for everyone. What I've even learned about myself is it's different for me depending on the day. And I can't, I'm too creative, I think, to just do the same routine every day, but I do know I need my own space, whether it's active taking a walk or sitting down and journaling or listening to music or listening to podcasts. It's something that it's just for me because I have to feed my own soul, so to speak, before I can step into other people's spaces and feed their souls
Yeah.
and make sure we provide the right snacks. Because if we don't do this well, we're just going to put out the wrong snacks or none at all, and then we wonder why our people are getting burned out. We're not giving them the
Yeah.
fuel. And it
Do you
starts with how we
find
do
that those
ourselves.
routines have different outcomes to them, where some
Mhm.
lead to a more creative outcome and maybe some lead to more patience and some lead to maybe more solitude?
Yeah, you're right on. I found I think what surprised me is the bigger that my life got, and I love that. I love growing things, and my company's grown quite a bit over the last 15 years. I had to give more space for myself. And our tendency, of course, is to reduce that space because our world's getting bigger. I realized that was costing me. And so maybe a 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute when I had a much smaller company worked for me. As I got bigger, I had to go really push against the counterintuitiveness of just saying, well, I can just reduce that time more. I couldn't. I had to increase it to an hour and sometimes sandwich it an hour in the morning and after a long, intense day, an hour in the evening. Um, I had to be much more conscious of the fact if I'm going to grow my life and my world and level up as a human being, I have to grow the grace space I'm giving to myself because I'm not just going to be influencing maybe 10 clients in front of you. Sometimes it's hundreds. Or, as I'm moving into speaking and keynoting, I don't want to get it wrong in that 45-minute keynote. I have to give myself what I need and that grace space to be able to step into that. And so I think that's what surprised me. You can't skimp on yourself. Otherwise, you won't be able to provide your best for people.
Yeah, and I would imagine that so often, whatever that is, that the
Mhm.
peace that brings you peace is so often not connected to anything in our work career. I mean,
Mhm.
and it might be. You're the expert certainly in that field, but it's hard to say that I'm doing this thing that's unrelated for the benefit of this, right?
Exactly. In fact, I work with such high achievers, most of them won't believe me. Of course, people don't come to me when they're thriving. They come to me when they're burned out and they're tired and they can't figure it out. And I have to tell them something that feels counterintuitive. And that's why I use an allegory of this little girl who, she started putting on all these bracelets. It was in my first book. Starts putting all these bracelets and stops going on the tire swing that she loves and can't figure out why she's disappearing and why she, doesn't like her life. It's just an allegory for what we do to ourselves. We do it because we're high achievers, we're pushing, we're hard driving, and we've lost our tire swings. And so, what our tire swing is at 24 or 34 or 44 or 54, it's always shifting and changing, but we don't give ourselves enough grace to slow down and respond to ourselves. We just react. The first chapter is responding versus reacting. We're just reacting to do more, Heather, keep up more. Things are growing around you. So we become very mean to ourselves. I joke that I'm the worst boss I've ever worked for. And so learning how to have grace to yourself is incredible discipline to be able to slow it down and really stay curious of what you need and what you're longing for. And I literally have to tell people, particularly again, my high achievers, I call it the Thrive Plan. You have to assess daily, weekly, monthly, and annually. So daily is like that hour. Weekly is like maybe a half day you're just taking for you to decompress. Monthly is maybe a full day, maybe even a weekend. And then annually is a good, 2, 3 a days just by yourself. And people don't believe me because, to your point, they think, well, I'm not working on something. I'm not being productive. And I go, that's what's crippling you. That's what's paralyzing you. It's when you go find time for that tire swing and you do it on a cadence of the daily, weekly, monthly, and annually, that your creativity and actually your accomplishments and your achievements actually go up. And of course, there's all this research to cite it. But working with high achievers, particularly North American culture, we're taught, if you're not doing well, grind harder, hustle more, push harder. And I'm just as guilty of it. All my fingers are pointing back, but I think that's why I'm spending so much of my life wanting to talk about it, because I too had to reach burnout and realize I don't think I'm very happy. I don't think I'm liking my life. And then we become a victim to our life versus being able to say, "Oh my goodness, I get to get back in the driver's seat and create my life."
So what you're saying is more music. That's basically what I'm hearing
That's
you say.
exactly what I'm
So
saying. Yeah. You would actually love some of the research, though, and I've done this. I do retreats around moving to the right side of the brain, and I will do 30 minutes of straight music, and then they doodle because it's moving you into the right side of their brain. And most people go, "Huh? Why is she doing this? What am I, back in kindergarten?" There's this feeling, but I'll do it with these high level achievers, executives, and everything, and then they'll go, I'll stop the music and they'll be like, "That was 30 minutes." I go, "That was 30 minutes. You just
mhm.
got lost in the right side of your brain." And now is when your creativity will start, coming. What we don't do is give ourselves just a break, a breather. So the fact you're starting your day like this, all I'm going to say is do more, kid, do
Yeah.
more.
No, thank you, thank you. There's way too many spreadsheets and
Yeah.
paperwork for all of us, and yeah, we're all better in that right side for sure.
And we all need each other to keep reminding each other to do more, right?
Yeah.
Because the world is constantly telling us, our own inner critic is constantly telling us, do more spreadsheets, hustle more,
Yeah.
do more tasks lists, and to be able to have friends and fellow colleagues in your world that says, "Hey, kid, when's the last time you got your tire sweet?"
Yeah.
That's all we need. It's just a little prompting there to remind us that's right. We value it, but sometimes we feel guilty when we take it.
That's what Heather Penny's for.
Oh, well, kid, as we're wrapping up here, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. What is some encouragement you want to give people that are trying to grapple with maybe fatigue and burnout or frustration or irritability, or maybe even this thought, well, that sounds too good to be true. Can you really be happy by doing less? What's some encouragement you would give?
Yeah, so you said it earlier, where there's a each one of us have this curiosity of this world
Mm,
around us, and
mhm,
we have I call them rabbit holes,
mm,
where in my music it's I find a song that I like, and then you find out who wrote it and who published it and the label that it's on, and then all of a sudden you're down this rabbit hole of all of this music that you've never ever heard it from before. And
mhm,
for me, I love that
mhm.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's a sense of discovery, but everybody has what their own rabbit holes are, or in
Mm,
that sense of curiosity that they have. And I believe that that's the impetus of the happiness, is it's finding the time of what makes you curious and
mm,
having the time to be able to go do and go down that rabbit hole, right?
mm. Love
And
that.
I think trying to find making sure that you know what your favorite rabbit hole is an
Mhm,
important feat of your for yourself. But then more important for a manager,
mhm,
because I need to know what that is for each one of our my staff that works for me too,
mhm,
right? I mean, and what brings them happiness? What are the roles in their job that they really feel comfortable in? And
mhm,
equally so, what are the ones that they feel really uncomfortable in,
mhm,
that hopefully we can make them feel more comfortable in? But if I'm able to bring up conversations or topics of conversation that are in and around their rabbit hole, that's gonna make
mm.
them feel better, right?
Yeah.
So, in a sense, their rabbit holes become mine too, and
Mhm,
hopefully, and so, um, if that was any advice, that as a manager, that's probably
mm,
what mine would be. It hasn't been different with as a parent.
mhm,
I have these boys that have all interests that are very different than mine. But
Mhm.
if I want to be part of their world, I need to go down those rabbit holes with them too,
Mhm.
right? And
Yes.
because that's what brings them happiness and passion.
Mhm.
And for my son Taylor, it's about he's building a new
Mhm.
Defender truck. And again,
Mhm.
I know zero about cars and trucks.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I know lots about Defenders now because that's his passion, and now
Yeah.
it's my passion too, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So again, it's that open space, I think, is at the end of some rabbit holes.
I love that. The rabbit holes, finding the rabbit holes, finding their snacks that fuel them. You're right on. It's showing interest and curiosity in someone's world and life. And if we truly care about them, we'll take the time to slow down, to engage, to even get out of our comfort zone and get into a whole new world that shows them actions speak louder than words, right? We're here and we care. I love that. That's a good one to end on. Well, thank you, Ken. Thanks so much for not only for the time that you've spent with us today, but for modeling gray space out there in the world and for joining me and letting me join you as we are leaving our legacy and trying to share gray space and invite other people into it. I'm so excited about this message and I'm excited about how people are responding to it. And I want to say you're in good company with the endorsers that I've gotten in this book because we're all doing it. And I'm looking forward to just hearing how the ripple effect continues to grow.
Well, the work you're doing is so important, and we love you and your family. It's you guys are, as we talked about authenticity. You guys live and breathe it every single day.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Well, take care, everyone. Ken and I are cheering you on. And join us because we're doing gray space, and we believe this is the new movement that's going to be pushing outwards, and we're all in, aren't we?
Yes.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We had such a great time today, and obviously, we are all stepping into this life that we're made for. But isn't it nice to have a little bit of support along the way? If you want to find out more about the life that you're made for, come find me at heatherpenny.com. Go ahead and subscribe, give us a review. That really helps us out and helps spread the word. You get to step into the life that you're made for. Cheering you on.